We live within an invisible, exhausting storm. It is a storm not of wind or rain, but of relentless, categorizing thought and mental chatter that attempts to manage reality by naming every single piece of it, leaving us breathless and profoundly disconnected from the very life we are trying to control. Now, let us explore the profound wisdom found not in adding more, but in letting go. Consider for a moment the ordinary act of waking up in the morning. The alarm sounds. Instantly, before our eyes even open, the labeling machinery of the mind engages. Loud. Annoying. Monday. Work. Before our feet touch the floor, we are already carrying the immense, invisible weight of 100 conceptual labels. We do not greet a fresh, unwritten day, we greet a prepackaged mental construct. This is the ordinary world of the modern humana world, mediated almost entirely by language, definition, and judgment. We mistake the label for the reality. As the philosopher Alan Watts eloquently pointed out, we eat the menu instead of the dinner. We confuse the map with the territory. The mind, in its well-intentioned effort to keep us safe and organized, acts as a compulsive narrator, separating the continuous, unified flow of reality into digestible, manageable fragments. But in doing so, it creates a rigid, disjointed world. This constant chopping up of reality is the very root of our modern anxiety. We feel alienated and deeply alone because we believe we are living in a universe of isolated, named objects, completely forgetting that we are an integral part of the fluid, seamless happening of the present moment. Imagine, if you will, walking through an ancient, magnificent forest. If you are walking with a botanist who is obsessively focused on classification, they might look at a towering, moss-draped oak and simply see Quercus robur. They register the category, the genus, the species. They mentally file it away in their internal spreadsheet and continue walking. By doing so, they have completely missed the tree. They missed the intricate, nameless dance of light and shadow upon the bark, the rich, damp scent of the earth, the profound stillness of the wood. They traded a living, breathing, immediate experience for a dead, static word. This is precisely what we do with our entire existence, from moment to moment. From a very young age, we are conditioned and rewarded for this behavior. What is that, child? Yes, it is a bird. Good. We are trained to become excellent, efficient identifiers of things. This skill is, of course, a practical necessity for survival and societal communication. However, the profound tragedy of our development is that we forget how to turn this mechanism off. We lose the capacity to perceive without prejudice. We construct a linguistic filter so thick, so dense, that the raw, vibrant sunlight of reality can barely penetrate it. When we sit quietly, attempting to find a moment of peace, we quickly realize how tyrannical this naming habit has become. What happens? A car drives down the street. Immediately, the mind asserts, car. Perhaps it swiftly adds a judgment, driving too fast, or loud exhaust. A dog barks in the distance. Dog. Annoying neighbor's dog. A siren wails. Ambulance. Danger. Notice the precise mechanics of what is happening here. The pure, innocent acoustic vibration entering the ear is instantly kidnapped by the intellect. It is dressed in a conceptual uniform and paraded through the mind's internal courtroom, where it is swiftly categorized as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. In a state of baseline anxiety, we almost instinctively judge these auditory intrusions as annoyances. They are perceived as hostile interruptions to the peace we are so desperately trying to fabricate. But it is this very judgment, this compulsive labeling, that is the true source of our distress. The sound itself is entirely neutral. A car engine is simply a mechanical process of combustion moving air. It possesses no inherent malice. It is not trying to annoy you. The irritation arises entirely from the violent collision between the reality of the sound occurring and your mind's rigid demand that the world conform to a labeled expectation of silence. You are fighting the universe, and in a battle against the present moment, the universe has a perfect winning streak. This constant, grinding friction between what simply is and what our labeled expectations dictate should be, generates a profound existential fatigue. We are perpetually on guard, our psychological immune systems overreacting to the harmless pollen of everyday experience. We become trapped in a self-referential loop. The mind reacts not to the world, but to its own labels of the world, creating a cascading avalanche of anxiety out of a perfectly ordinary, mundane environment. The internal narrator demands immense psychological energy to keep the story running, endlessly translating the raw data of the senses into the dry, abstract code of language. We mistakenly believe that if we just find the correct words, the perfect label, or the right rational explanation for our anxiety, we will finally be free of it. We attempt to think our way out of the trap of overthinking. But trying to quiet the mind with more thoughts is like trying to smooth rough water with a hot flat iron. We only disturb the surface further, creating more steam, more turbulence, and more confusion. The path to true psychological well-being, the return to a state of inner equilibrium, does not lie in building a better, more comprehensive dictionary to define our world. It lies in the radical, gentle act of temporarily closing the book entirely. We must step out of the claustrophobic realm of symbols and prepare to return to the vast, open space of direct, nameless experience. To close this book of symbols, we must first understand the nature of the illusion it creates. Language operates by dividing a unified universe into separate, bit-sized fragments. It relies heavily on nouns, words that represent static, isolated things. We say the tree, the car, the bird, as if these entities exist entirely independently of the earth, the air, and the sky. But in the physical reality of the universe, there are no nouns, there are only verbs. The universe is not a massive warehouse filled with separate objects, it is a single, unimaginably complex event. It is a seamless, continuous happening. The tree is not a static object, it is the earth treeing. The cloud is the sky clouding. And the human being is the universe peopling. When we apply this profound philosophical shift to the realm of our senses, a remarkable transformation begins to occur. Let us focus specifically on the sense of hearing, for sound is perhaps the most immediate and pervasive anchor we have to the present moment. When you sit quietly, attempting to meditate or simply relax, the world does not stop making noise. The traffic continues its steady hum, the wind rustles the leaves, pipes creak, and distant conversations murmur through the walls. As we established, the anxious mind immediately leaps upon these vibrations, desperate to name them, judge them, and push them away. It views them as foreign invaders attacking the fortress of your peace. But what happens if we suspend the naming process? What if we strip away the linguistic labels and encounter the raw acoustic data just as it is? When a dog barks, and you refuse to use the word dog or the concept of an animal, what is actually left? What remains is pure vibration. It is a sudden, sharp fluctuation in the air pressure, traveling outward in waves, striking the delicate drum of your ear, and translating into an electrical impulse within the brain. It is a physical touch at a distance. When we truly comprehend this, we realize that the division between the sound out there and the listener in here is entirely arbitrary. The vibrating vocal cords of the distant animal, the molecules of air carrying the wave, and the vibrating membrane inside your ear are all participating in a single, continuous physical event. You are not a passive, isolated victim receiving an annoying noise from a hostile external world. You are an active, intimate participant in a unified acoustic dance. The boundary of your skin is not an impermeable wall separating you from reality, it is a porous, sensitive bridge connecting you to the rest of the cosmos. This brings us to a crucial teaching championed by Alan Watts: the idea that the universe, at its core, is fundamentally musical. When we listen to a symphony, we do not listen to it in order to reach the final chord. If the purpose of music were simply to get to the end, then the best conductors would be the ones who played the piece the fastest, and composers would only write finales. But the point of music is the music itself. It is the melody, the rhythm, the harmony, the rise and fall, the interplay of tension and release. We do not judge a piece of music by naming its constituent parts. We do not sit in the concert hall and say, "Ah, that is a cello. Now that is a flute. That is a loud noise." We simply let the entire complex pattern of sound wash over us, experiencing it as a unified, moving tapestry. Why, then, do we not treat the sounds of our everyday environment with the exact same reverence and open-mindedness? The answer lies entirely in our conditioning, in our compulsion to classify and control. But if we can adopt the mindset of an impartial listener, the entire world transforms into a magnificent, unpredictable symphony. The deep, rumbling drone of a passing truck becomes the bass section. The sharp, staccato chirp of a bird serves as the woodwinds. The patter of rain against the glass is a delicate percussion. Even the erratic hum of a refrigerator can be heard as a sustained, resonant drone beneath the chaotic melody of life. This is not a matter of trying to force yourself to like sounds that you previously found annoying. That is simply another trap of the ego, another form of striving in judgment. Rather, it is about shifting your perspective so fundamentally that the categories of like and dislike, pleasant and annoying, completely dissolve. When you listen to a car alarm not as an interruption, but merely as a rising and falling pitch of acoustic energy, it loses its psychological grip on you. It ceases to be an attack on your nervous system and becomes merely another wave on the vast ocean of existence. Of course, as you attempt this, you will encounter the central trial of this psychological journey. The mind will resist. The habit of a lifetime does not surrender easily. As you sit and listen to the nameless symphony, the narrator will constantly try to interject. That's an airplane, it will whisper. That's the neighbor's television. When this happens, and it will happen frequently, the most vital instruction is this: do not fight the mind. Do not become angry with yourself for labeling. If you judge your own judgment, you have simply created a new layer of anxiety, a new internal conflict. You are fighting the waves instead of floating upon them. Instead, when the label arises, simply acknowledge it as just another sound. The internal voice saying, "That is an airplane," is, itself, merely a vibration occurring within consciousness. Treat your own thoughts with the same detached, musical appreciation that you are applying to the external world. Let the thought arise, let it echo, and let it fade away into the silence, without holding on to it, without believing in its solid reality. You are not trying to create a blank, empty mind. You are cultivating a spacious, accommodating mind so vast that it can hold the entire chaotic symphony of the world without feeling crowded or threatened. As we deepen this practice, a profoundly liberating philosophical insight begins to dawn on us. We start to look for the I who is listening. We assume there is a fixed, solid center of consciousness residing somewhere behind our eyes, passively receiving all this auditory information. But when we look closely, when we truly investigate our direct experience, we cannot find the listener. Try to separate yourself from the act of hearing. You will find it is impossible. There is no independent you who stands apart from the sound, receiving it. There is only the hearing itself. In the precise moment that a sound occurs, you are the sound. When a bell rings, there is no you and a bell, there is only the unified experience of ringing. The subject and the object collapse into a single, indivisible occurrence. This is the profound revelation that dismantles the very architecture of anxiety. Anxiety relies entirely on the illusion of a separate, fragile self that must be protected from a hostile, external world. But if the boundary between self and world is an illusion, if you are the music, if you are the happening, then there is nothing left to defend, and nothing left to fear. The heavy armor of the ego, constructed out of words and labels, begins to crack and fall away. We realize that we have been holding our breath for our entire lives, bracing ourselves against a universe that is, in truth, our own extended body. The nameless sound reveals the nameless self. We drop beneath the turbulent, choppy surface of language and concept, and we sink into the deep, quiet, eternal currents of direct experience. Here, in this space before words, before definitions, before the exhausting need to understand and control, we find a sanctuary that has always been available to us. We uncover a natural, effortless peace that does not depend on silencing the world, but on listening to it so deeply that we merge with its psalm. This realization is not a mystical achievement reserved for secluded monks, it is your birthright as a conscious being. It is the simple, radical act of remembering what you knew before you were taught how to speak. The child hears the world exactly as it is, a dazzling, overwhelming, beautiful chaos of sensation without meaning, without past, and without future. By consciously stepping back out of the linguistic matrix we have built around ourselves, we do not regress, we awaken. We bring the full, matured capacity of our adult awareness to the innocent, unmediated perception of the child. We become fully alive, fully present, completely unburdened by the need to narrate our own existence. The world stops being a problem to be solved and becomes, once again, a mystery to be experienced. How do we bring this profound realization down from the abstract clouds of philosophy and integrate it into the messy, noisy reality of our daily lives? The beauty of this approach is that it requires no special equipment, no secluded mountaintop retreat, and no perfectly soundproofed room. In fact, the very environment you are in right now, with all its hums, rattles, interruptions, and complexities, is the perfect, living laboratory for your liberation. The practice is not about changing your environment, it is entirely about changing your relationship to it. Let us try a gentle experiment together. The next time you feel that familiar, restrictive tightening of anxiety in your chest, or sense your mind beginning to spin out of control into a vortex of overthinking, simply stop. You do not need to alter your posture or close your eyes unless you wish to do so. Just gently shift your attention away from the frantic internal narrator and redirect it outward, into the open space of your hearing. Imagine that your ears are not active hunters seeking out specific, useful information, but rather deep, passive valleys into which the sounds of the world simply fall like rain. Do not reach out to grasp the noise. Just let it arrive. You might hear the distant, continuous rush of traffic, the low, mechanical hum of a refrigerator, the sudden rustle of wind through dry leaves, or perhaps the muffled murmur of voices in another room. Almost immediately, your deeply conditioned labeling machine will spring to life. It will confidently announce, "That is a siren. That means danger," or "That is my neighbor." They are always so loud. The very moment you notice this happening, and it is completely natural that it will gently, without a single ounce of frustration or self-criticism, let the words drop away. Strip the solid noun away from the fluid verb. Do not fight the siren, simply listen to its pitch, its rising and falling frequency, the raw physical texture of its vibration. Listen as if you were an explorer who has just arrived on this planet, entirely unfamiliar with human machinery or animal life, experiencing these acoustic events for the very first time. When you listen in this unburdened way, without naming and without resisting, a remarkable, physical shift begins to occur within the body. The chronic, muscular resistance that was actively generating your anxiety begins to melt away. You realize, perhaps for the first time, that the noise itself was never the actual problem. Your rigid, internal demand for silence was the problem. By accepting the sound exactly as it manifests, you entirely remove the psychological friction. The siren, the barking dog, the heavy footsteps upstairs, they all cease to be hostile interruptions to your peace. Instead, they transform into the very texture of the present moment. They become the spontaneous, unwritten music of your existence right now. This is the quiet, expansive freedom of listening without words. It is a practice of radical hospitality, inviting the entire, chaotic world into your awareness without checking its credentials or demanding its justification at the door. When you stop demanding that the universe conform to your labeled expectations, you discover a profound secret: the universe is already perfectly harmonious, exactly as it is, simply because it is happening. Let us consider the immense relief of dropping this psychological burden. The ego, this constructed sense of a separate, isolated self, is incredibly heavy to carry. It requires constant, exhausting maintenance. It must be continuously defended against perceived insults, propelled toward future success, and reassured of its own existence through the endless, circular chatter of the internal monologue. Anxiety is the natural, unavoidable byproduct of carrying this heavy, fragile illusion. But when you give your full, undivided attention to the raw, unnamed reality of sound, the internal monologue must naturally pause. You cannot simultaneously be lost in a labyrinth of thought and completely, utterly absorbed in the pure vibration of a ringing bell. The mind cannot occupy both spaces at once. Therefore, the act of pure listening is not merely a temporary relaxation technique to soothe frayed nerves, it is a profound philosophical realization enacted directly in the present moment. It is a direct, visceral experience of self-transcendence. You step out of the claustrophobic, manufactured prison of the mind and step into the boundless, breathing expanse of reality. You discover that beneath the frantic, choppy waves of your own anxious thinking, there is a vast ocean of stillness. And you realize that this stillness is not the absence of sound, but the total absence of resistance. It is a profound, unshakable peace that is spacious enough to hold the noise of the entire world. The price of this profound peace is merely the surrender of our need to control, leaving behind the heavy armor of our words. When we cease naming the world, we finally allow ourselves to truly hear it. Thank you for sharing this quiet space with us. If you found stillness here, consider subscribing to continue the journey inward.